Evening, everybody. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the VIDA TV Network. Glad you've joined in. Talking taxes primarily tonight, not with one, but two guests. Interviewed both of them on the radio show. The first one is a guy that I really trust. His name is Merrill Matthews, Institute for Policy Innovation. That's where he works. Here's a guy who actually read all of Obamacare, not the hundreds of thousands of pages that were added on afterwards, but the initial bill that so many Democrats had voted on, yes, without reading the dang thing. But he's also a tax specialist. So we'll get into that conversation with him coming up on the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here in a few moments. Toward the end of the show, I will address what has been going on with Roy Moore and with now Senator Al Franken in the rank hypocrisy of not only Democrat liberal extremists, but also those who call themselves Republicans. But for now, we're talking taxes. This is how the interview with my good buddy Merrill Matthews went earlier on today. Welcome back, everybody. It's Chris Salcedo Show. I'm glad you've tuned in. Joined now by an old friend of the program, Merrill Matthews. He is with the Institute for Policy Innovation, one of the few human beings on this planet unfortunate enough to have read the entire Obamacare law. He's joining us now. He's also an expert and one of our go-to guys on taxes. Merrill, welcome back to the Salcedo Show.
Thank you, Chris. And of course, it's been downhill ever since I read that law.
I know. Nothing. It didn't get any better, did it?
It did not get any better. In fact, it's getting worse. And not only was it predictable, we predicted it. You and I have been talking about this all along. There's nothing surprising here.
Sometimes I hate it when I'm right, but I was right. You were right. It actually didn't take a genius to figure out that Obamacare was destined to fail. But I brought you on today to talk about taxes and the plans before us. I want to get your opinion of the House and the Senate plans. And then I made another prediction that I hope that was wrong about, but let me get your take on both the plans.
Well, both of them have some good things. Both of them have some bad things. Neither one of them go nearly as far as I would like it. But both of them are staying fairly firm on the issue of the corporate income tax cut. Down to 35%, down to 20%. Both of them are keeping the immediate expensing in there. I think that is important. The Senate version, at least, was going to do the corporate tax cut. I believe they were going to postpone it for a year. Yeah. That's a bad deal, because if you postpone it, wait through 2018, then it starts kicking in. The economy starts picking up. The economy could really start booming just about the time of the election. Democrats could take control and then take credit for all that. And we don't want that. We want Republicans to be able to take credit for this if they'll pass a good bill.
Yeah, no kidding. By the way, folks, when he was talking about expensing, he's talking about businesses. Businesses are able to, let's say you own a business and you deliver pizzas. Well, or you're a pizza business, you deliver pizzas and you buy a bunch of trucks. If you bought a new truck, you'd be able to deduct that as a business expense that year. You wouldn't have to depreciate it as the current nonsensical tax code does.
And you know, where this is crazy is when you buy software or computers or things like that. Sure. You depreciate that over several years, and you may have long stopped using the software as you're still depreciating it.
Sure, absolutely. I'll get into my analysis, and you tell me where, if you're as bearish as I am, or depending on which plan we're talking about. The House version, I believe, is the better of the two. I believe the House version, because it simplifies the tax code, that's almost worth the price of admission right there. It has a mindset that is geared toward we the people, our personal checkbooks, money coming out of our accounts. The Senate version keeps all the complicated structure, keeps 7 tax brackets, keeps it very Washington-centered with the mindset, government must be funded, government must be funded. And that seems to be the focus of the Senate bill. You mentioned the delayed corporate income tax. And then the Senate added something that I found a bit curious. The Senate added the repeal of the individual mandate on Obamacare, which has a tax implication because, remember, Merrill, the Supreme Court told us that Obamacare is a tax. Remember?
Yes.
Obamacare is a tax. So they're legitimate in doing this. But not paid to attention by a lot of folks, while the Senate is contemplating getting rid of the individual mandate, which is the core of Obamacare. On the side, they're working out a deal to where they'll be able to reinstitute those those payments, those taxpayer-funded payments
Right.
to the traitorous insurance companies. So to me, this just screams poison pill. I think that the people who are in charge in the United States Senate, the Republicans, are willing to torpedo tax reform the same way they did the Obamacare rewrite initiative just to stick it to Donald Trump. Are you as bearish as I am?
I'm I'm not as bearish, and let me tell you why. First off, on the House side, you're right about the House side being better. And one thing you didn't mention is the House side phased out all these energy subsidies for renewable energies,
Yep.
which I would, in some cases, accelerating. But that's a great way. I mean, you're trying to put fossil fuels and renewable energy on a level playing field again, and I think that's a good plus. In addition, the House, though, had initially not decided they would go with repealing the individual mandate. Paul Ryan said a few days ago, we don't need to include that because we've got the votes anyway. Excuse me, y'all campaigned for 7 years on repealing that thing. All you're doing is repealing the mandate. And so the Senate was putting that in. As you point out, they're looking at trying to combine that with with Lamar Alexander, Patty Murray's bill, which continues these subsidies to the insurance companies, which Donald Trump cut off in October because they're unconstitutional. Now, but the deal is, as I understand it, they're not going to put the Alexander Murray bill in the tax bill. That means they're going to vote on it maybe later in the year. So if it's 2 votes and the Senate is saying, we'll let you have a vote on this, that doesn't mean the House is going to vote on it at all. So I would take that deal because I suspect the House wouldn't vote on it.
Okay, I see. The procedural angle you're going down there. Merrill Matthews, our guest right now, Institute for Policy Innovation. Tax reform is desperately needed. I agree with your assessment that neither one of these tax bills goes far enough to actually what we really need, but it's what we can get in the current political environment. Let me focus on the Senate side if I can. Mm-hmm. They got an awful lot wrong. They have an awful lot wrong in that tax bill. Again, it's very Washington centered, and I am not going to loosen my grip that there are elements, and we already have Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin has said no. Senator Susan Collins says she has serious problems and is likely a no. That's it. That's all the wiggle room you have. And yes. Ron Johnson said, well, I just don't like the way this is all the process. The man's focused on process, if you can believe it. Now, look, I understand he's a Wisconsin senator, and he's got to talk to the liberal progressives up there and try to get elected. And so maybe he is one of these guys that says, okay, I agree, I can be peeled off. But there's no wiggle room left, Merrill. Just one more senator defects, and it's over. It's torpedoed.
I think Ron Johnson will probably come around to yes. That's my sense. Mm-hmm. In terms of the bad side on the Senate with the tax breaks for individuals and so forth, the taxes, I'm less concerned about the individual side than I am about the corporate side. It would have been fine with me if they said we're going to do corporate tax reform first and then come back and do individual tax reform, because you don't get any real economic growth out of the individual side. You may get a little bit, but the real economic spurt comes from lowering the corporate tax rates and that immediate expensing, bringing back that $3 trillion or so sitting overseas. So that's anything that has that in there, I'm going to generally be a go on. And the other things, I'm willing to come back and try to readjust later if we have to. But I want to get the corporate side done.
Well, you know how the class warriors, class warfare guys will couch that. A big payoff to corporations. I say this on the show all the time. Will you tell the folks what I mean when I say corporations do not pay taxes? We pay the taxes?
Corporations don't pay taxes. They pass those costs on. They either do it in lower wages, reduced hiring, higher prices, or lower profits and distributions on their stock. So that's what happens there. Corporations don't pay taxes, and serious economists have noted that for a long time, which is why, from a serious economist standpoint, they would say the proper corporate tax rate is 0. Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. And then if you carry this out to its logical conclusion, if the cost of production goes down, guess what? The cost of products go down. And what does that do? It puts money back in yours and my pocket. I know the House version is basically saying they'll save around $1,200, $1,300 for an average family of four, but that they can't score what the reduction in the corporate tax rate will do and how much money that will mean back into people's pockets because of the reduced cost of products and goods and services.
Well, just think about this. Under the corporate tax cut, things that they couldn't afford under a 35% tax rate at 15 or 20%, Donald Trump was for 15. I wish they had gone there. At a 20% tax rate, it just makes it a much more affordable investment. You open a whole new range of investments for corporations that wouldn't make sense at 35, but may very well make sense at 20. Just like your listeners out there, they want to buy a house at one price. They may not be able to afford it there. You knock off 20, 30% off that price of the house, and they may be able to afford it.
Now, last thing, John McCain made a big stink about saving Obamacare. He walked up, he took that thumb of his out of his nose, and we cleaned that up yesterday too. And he gave the big old thumbs down.
Right.
Now, and that was because he was desirous to save Obamacare, or if I give him the benefit of the doubt, he didn't want to get rid of Obamacare until the Democrats told him it was okay. So what is to prevent if, let's say, the Senate bill keeps this getting rid of the individual mandate? Isn't that an invitation for John McCain to say, I'm voting no?
I saw a statement from him today saying he was considering it and he's not necessarily opposed to it. And of course, remember, eliminating the mandate doesn't get rid of Obamacare. Eliminating the mandate says is you don't have to pay a penalty for if you decide not to buy an Obamacare qualified policy. If you're in Obamacare and if you're an exchange, if you can find a policy available there, you still can be in there. You can still get the subsidies. All of those things are still available. It just means we're not told we have to buy health insurance. And so that's a little bit different. And he may be, I'm optimistic he will go along with that.
Well, we shall see. Merrill Matthews, everybody, one of the most trusted voices in America on not only on Obamacare, but on tax policy. The Institute for Policy Innovation. Always a pleasure having you on, buddy.
Thank you.
Okay, that's segment one for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide on taxes. Next, we'll be talking to the chairman of the powerful Ways and Means Committee. Kevin Brady comes back to the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide. The vote has been taken. The Republicans passed tax reform in the House. Now, what about the Senate? We'll talk with him coming up next on the VIDA Television Network, The Chris Salcedo Show. Welcome back, everybody. The Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the VIDA Television Network. Earlier today on the radio, I had a chance to visit with Congressman Kevin Brady. He's the chairman of the powerful Ways and Means Committee about tax reform that just passed the House. But before I got there, I had to deal with a certain left-wing senator from New Jersey. Here's how that went.
To those in the press who did their job and did it with professionalism.
Right.
And even to some of you who are actually kind.
Yes, they were kind. They didn't cover it at all. They hid it from the American people. Yes, very kind of you folks in the basket of biased press.
I believe you showed others what a professional press is all about.
No, you showed others what the current press is about, which is covering for you Democrats.
And why that freedom is so important to our society. To those who were digging my political grave so that they could jump into my seat, I know who you are, and I won't forget you.
Ooh, there's the Democrat. There's the Democrat we all know and love. I know who you are, and I'll not be forgetting you, says New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez. That wasn't me, by the way, folks, saying thuggish. That was Juan Williams, a Democrat, last night upon hearing that statement from Robert Menendez. He said something that was also very curious, ladies and gentlemen. He said it was his seat. Might I suggest to the good senator, that seat belongs to the people of New Jersey. You're just sitting in it. All right, we've made a contact with Congressman Kevin Brady, representing the 8th Congressional District in the great state of Texas, chairman of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, welcome back to the Chris Salcedo Show.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me back. We had a big day yesterday.
It was a big day. And you know what? And hats off to the Republicans in the House for doing their jobs and getting something done. Look, let me give you a Texas perspective, and you're a Texan, so you ought to know about this. A lot of the high-tax states are up in arms because we here in Texas have been subsidizing their citizens, their big governments in California, New York, and Illinois to tax the living daylights out of their people. And then being able to write that out on their federal tax bill. And we here in Texas have been subsidizing that, and I think it's about time that ends, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are taking a different approach here. And by the way, look, I think we ought to provide tax relief to every American, regardless of where they live. But on that state and local income, look, the way it works today is everyone pays higher taxes in America, and then we all sort of subsidize, send money to each other, rural communities to cities, middle income to higher, low tax states to high tax states. So our proposal is, look, why don't we stop doing that? Why don't we lower everyone's taxes, and then you just pay your own local ones? And we think that's a better way. It's fair and a better way to do it. And look, it is tough for some of the lawmakers in these states, which is why when you look at the tax cuts, the new family tax credit, and getting rid of the AMT, it really does help families in those high tax states.
Yeah, I get it. I know, and I understand it. And again, I think
maybe I think we do it in a fair way.
Well, that's going to bring accountability too. Those states need to be accountable for their high taxes. Those in the governments in the state. And as a conservative in the state of Texas, I'm tired of allowing these high tax states to exploit their people and let them get away with it. Let me move on to your bill, which I have said. By the way, you worked very hard on this. You worked incredibly hard on it, and I think not only you, but everybody that was working on the Ways and Means Committee put in a lot of hours. And you know what? I'm gratified to see Congress doing that kind of work for a change. And I've said that the House bill is more in line with what the people need and want. The Senate bill is an absolute disgrace, sir. It really is. The way I've put it is the House bill is of the people. The Senate bill is of Washington. Am I being unfair?
Well, here's what there are differences. There's no question about it, Chris. Here's what really I think is encouraging, which is because we spent almost 3 months with President Trump and his team drawing the same target on the wall. This is what pro-growth tax reform should look like. Both the House and Senate are driving toward that target. That's the good news, because I can't imagine what this would look like if we weren't actually shooting at the same target. They do have differences. There's no question. In the House, look, we stripped the tax code down to the studs and said, let's rebuild it for America now, not 30 years, not 50 years ago. Let's rebuild it to growth and simplicity and fairness now. And so, look, we went really bold on a lot of these items. There's no question about it. Senate took a little different approach, but
little.
At least, to their credit, they're driving to the target.
Well, let's see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm of a belief that there are so many poison pills on the Senate side that they're just looking for an excuse to kill their side. But I hope I'm wrong on that. Congressman Kevin Brady, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, our guest right now, folks. One weakness I did see in the House bill was this. It gave proper tax relief to the corporate side, which I firmly believe needed to happen because we're instantaneously non-competitive on the international stage. But it didn't do the same type of robust relief for small businesses in America. Do you think that can get ironed out in conference, if there is a conference?
So two thoughts. We are putting hundreds of billions of dollars of relief to small businesses and other businesses that aren't corporations. In fact, the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Business, helped design and are really supporting the super low 9% rate for the first $75,000 of business. Doesn't matter what kind of small business you are, so that for Main Street businesses, we really do well. Here's the challenge. We got a lot of companies that aren't corporations, but they're major, important parts of our economy. It's been harder. We're providing a lot of tax relief, but it's an area where we've got to find a way to do it better.
I hear you.
I agree with you. Not that we're shorting one or the other. One's harder to solve is what we've now discovered. I got you.
And maybe that can be worked out in conference. Only got a couple of minutes left. Yeah, only a couple of minutes left here, Congressman. Look, I'm very concerned, as you well know, and you and I have had this conversation about spending. The tax cuts and growth alone is not going to solve our looming fiscal disaster. The United States Congress must get a handle on this spending, but from the speaker on down, that nobody's talking about it, Congressman, and it's a frustration for the conservative movement. What say you?
Yeah. So this is all about growing revenues. And by the way, not just growing the economy to do the revenues, but the reason we're eliminating so many of these special interest deductions and carve-outs and loopholes is to get us is to curb the spending in the tax code. So in this bill, we're doing that. But there's no doubt we have to do the spending side, which is why next year when we finish tax reform, we're pivoting straight to welfare reform. Because as you know, we're spending about $1 trillion a year in various welfare, not Medicare and Social Security, but I mean welfare programs. And you're keeping a lot of good people, trapping them in these government programs. So we're pivoting straight to getting people back into good paying jobs. All right. Because it also has an impact on the spending side.
I have a favor to ask of you. Congressman Kevin Brady, by the way, chairman of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee. This is a favor from the Chris Salcedo Show. We have learned, courtesy of the women in the United States Congress, that there is a slush fund up there that has paid out $15 million to those accused on Capitol Hill of sexual misconduct. Nobody seems to know about this, Congressman. Jim Jordan said, I didn't even know this thing existed. I imagine you're in the same boat. Now that you've got tax reform, now that you've got tax reform in the rearview mirror, you've done your job before conference, would you find out what this fund is all about, who's authorizing these expenditures, and report back to us?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. That's not in my wheelhouse. We could probably get an appropriator who does the spending. We do the raising of money. The appropriators do the spending of money, but I can ask some offices what this is about. I heard it. What I don't know is this. I don't know. This is the first time I've heard of it. We'd be glad to do some of the research.
Absolutely, because a lot of our callers this morning and the revelations going on with Al Franken and the fact that this fund even exists, folks want to know and deserve to know, in my opinion, where that money is going and why it's being dispersed. Yeah. Congressman Kevin Brady, everybody, represents the 8th Congressional District here in the great state of Texas, also the chairman of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for the Thanksgiving gift of at least marching toward some sane fiscal reform on Capitol Hill and tax reform. We appreciate it.
Big start. Thanks, Chris.
You betcha, sir. Thank you very much.
Care.
All right. Okay, let's shelve tax talk for now. Let's get to the other big story this week. And, of course, that has been sexual misconduct undertaken by various high-profile figures from Hollywood. Sylvester Stallone just yesterday had an accuser come out, all the way to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., or those who seek to be in Washington, D.C. Many of them are Democrats. There's one right now. That's Senator from the great state of Minnesota, Al Franken. Al Franken, when this picture was taken, was 2006. He was a comedian back then. He wasn't a senator. He was on a USO trip with that woman. She is Miss Tweeden. She is a radio news anchor out in Los Angeles. They both went on this USO trip, and Mr. Franken is pictured here groping her breasts and having somebody take a picture of it. Now, there are other allegations that are going along with this, as Miss Tweeden stepped in front of the cameras and said that Al Franken forcefully kissed her and shoved his tongue down her throat in an action that was unwanted. Al Franken has admitted to what you see here in the picture, well, because there's photographic evidence. He's admitted to it. He says, well, he doesn't exactly remember the kissing episode the way Miss Tweeden recalls it. But, in this landscape today, ladies and gentlemen, we are told we must unequivocally believe accusers. Unequivocally. Now, Senator Al Franken is cooperating. He has actually encouraged a full ethics investigation of his conduct. And he said he'll cooperate with that investigation. You know who else called for an investigation? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is a Republican. Now, that in and of itself, ladies and gentlemen, is not bad. I mean, Senate Majority Leader, opposite party, says, well, we need a full investigation before we get rid of or scorn a sitting member of Congress. Only one problem with that. This guy. That's Judge Roy Moore. He is running for Senate in Alabama. He also has accusers that I think the total now is 7 who have come out and said that he acted inappropriately with women 40 years ago. Now, upon hearing that accusation leveled several times at Judge Roy Moore, Senate Leader Republican Mitch McConnell called for Roy Moore to step aside, to step down, to go away. And Mitch McConnell was not alone. Several other Republican senators did the same. Now, look, what I find troubling about all of this is the hypocrisy of Senate Leader Mitch McConnell. The Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, upon hearing accusations against Roy Moore, called for him to step down. Upon hearing accusations against Senator Al Franken, a Democrat serving right now in the Senate, and then admitting to what he was being accused of, Senator Mitch McConnell says we need an investigation. Senator Mitch McConnell, alleged Republican, alleged conservative, ladies and gentlemen, is a hypocrite. Senator Mitch McConnell should step down. If it is a step aside or step worthy offense for somebody in his own party to do it, it should be the same for the other side, shouldn't it be? I think the reason that Mitch McConnell has not called for the Democrat to step down is the Democrat is part of the club. And Senator Mitch McConnell is desperately trying to keep this man out of that club. Now, another bit of news that came out this week, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to be aware of. A Democrat congresswoman let us know that there is a slush fund up there on Capitol Hill, and that slush fund, taxpayer funded, has paid off $15 million to accusers of members of Congress of sexual misconduct. The only problem is the Democrat who told us about the slush fund didn't tell us who committed the offenses, didn't tell us who stood accused of sexual harassment or sexual misconduct. The Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide is calling on Senator Mitch McConnell, Senator Chuck Schumer, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, and Speaker of the House Ryan to release every single name of members of Congress, past and present, who had our taxpayer dollars pay off their accusers of sexual misconduct. And they should do it tomorrow. And further, using the Judge Roy Moore standard that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell laid out, those individuals who paid off using taxpayers' money, their accusers must be immediately expelled from the United States Congress. And that's going to do it for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday on the VIDA Television Network.